Good morning. We're looking at hash tables, and within that we had looked at chaining, and then the next part was we found that it has low cache efficiency, plus we have to use another data structure. So we were wondering if we could make use of the same array, which will have some limitations in terms of the number of elements we could insert, but at least it will have a single data structure, plus the cache efficiency might turn out to be a little better. So towards that, we were looking at linear probing. In linear probing, whenever there is a conflict, we have to look for the next entry or some entry in the linear as a linear function of the number of conflicts that have occurred. And that is going to give you a new index at which the second element can be inserted, the conflicting element can be inserted. One of the ways in which, the overall efficiency or the overall complexity is going to be still proportional to the size of the hash table, which we said could be improved to number of elements in the hash table, which is n. And then we also discussed that it could actually be further improved. Improved meaning it can be made more precise with respect to the number of elements that are already there in the hash table, say m. So that was one part, but one of the ways in which it's, while the complexity doesn't change, one of the ways in which it can be improved is instead of going all the way to all the cells or m cells, you could look for the first empty cell that you encounter. And as soon as you encounter that, you just return from there. That is the index at which you have a free cell. Right, so that was our insertion operation. This we have looked at, and as you guys had noted, that mod h was missing, which I have added now. So with that, we looked at the find, right? And find said that it's similar, where I need to look for that particular element. So if I have found out an empty cell, then I could return, right? And then there was some discussion that we had that, oh, if it so happens that even E2, E3, if all of these get mapped to the same index, so E1 is going to get inserted at the correct index. Let's say E2 gets inserted at the next one, and then E3 at the next one, right? So index, then index plus 1 and index plus 2. These are the entries at which these are occurring. And suppose E2 gets deleted. If E2 gets deleted, then I am going to look for the next empty entry. And therefore, if I am searching for E3 now, which is actually present in the hash table, right? So if I just put that here, so let's say there is E1, then there is E2, and then there is E3, right? These are stored, let's say, in consecutive locations, because these hash to the same bucket. Now E2 got deleted, and so in our, according to whatever we have discussed so far, it should be an empty cell. Now when I'm searching for E3, right? So E1 I'll find, that is okay, but when I'm searching for E3, I can go for, okay, is E3 present here? No, because it hashed to the bucket. Then I'm going to look for this position according to linear probing, and this will be shown as an empty cell. And I might get tempted to return early, saying that E3 doesn't exist, because if it would have been existing, it would have been added at this location. But actually E3 is present, and this happened because of the interplay between the insert and delete. Therefore, we have to be careful about whether we can do an early exit if there are deletions possible in this case. Okay, so if your loop is not having such a mechanism, right, for find, right? So I'm showing the code for insert, but I'm talking about find. So if find does not look for an empty cell and it just goes over all the way to h entries or n entries or m entries, then it is okay, then there is no problem. But if it is with respect to an empty cell, then that seems to be taken care of in a different manner, right? So that we said could be taken care of. So you can have an early exit by marking this as not an empty cell, but maybe a deleted cell. right? Something else, some other sentinel value. So empty cell might be represented using int max. The deleted value might be stored as int max -1, something like that, or int min. If I keep track of a deleted cell, then I might be able to do something better, right? Then I can distinguish between an empty cell and deleted cell, and then I'll be able to say that since this is deleted, maybe it was some other element. Let me go ahead and look for E3 further. So this is what was our find code. So let's look at that. So we said that if it is the element is found, then it is okay. Otherwise, if it is an empty cell, then I'm going to say that it is not present. This is early exit, right? And this is possible because the deletion marks it in a different way than the empty cell. So let's look at the deletion now. The complexity of find is still order H in the worst case, but let's look at the remove part, which is going to make use of some other sentinel value for the deleted part. Okay. So the code also remains almost the same as insert and find, where we hash, then go over H or N or M. If it is the element that I have found, then I'm going to mark it as deleted. Right? So that particular cell in that index is going to be marked as deleted, and then I'm going to return true, which means that I have found the element which I am removing. Otherwise, if it is an empty cell, what does that mean? I'm trying to remove an entry and you have found an empty cell. It's not a deleted cell. That means that if the element was inserted, it must have been inserted, it could have been inserted in the empty cell, and since the empty cell exists, that means the element could not be inserted here, and therefore I can do an early exit by returning false, that the element actually is not present which you are trying to remove. Of course, if you don't find it in the H iterations, then you can always say that it is not present and return false. The complexity of this operation is also order H or order N or order M. Any questions so far? Okay, so if there are no questions, we'll move further from here. So one of the issues that, or one of the advantages that we said about linear probing is that it has little better cache efficiency than pointer-based data structures like chaining. The second advantage was that you are able to take advantage of the same array. We don't need two data structures. But then there are downsides also. One downside we already know, that it is bounded by the size of the array. That can be usually taken care of because, not usually, but in some cases it can be taken care of. You know a larger bound on the number of elements that I can insert in the database, right? So in such cases it is all right. In some other cases where the size is not known, linear probing is not going to be a very useful mechanism. In such cases, you might have to make the hash table itself dynamic. And that requires a little bit of work because the hash function also needs to take into account the original values that you had inserted. Those should not change their indices, but you should still be able to push new elements into the larger sized array. So yeah, so that is one disadvantage. The other disadvantage is what is called as a primary clustering. What do we mean by primary clustering? If you look at the way the linear probing is going to look for elements, look for empty cell, is that it's going to hash to some value, and then it is going to look for the next possible element, right? So if you recall our hash function, hash table example that we had, where we had different elements, the same set of elements, but inserted in different orders, you could see that the same cells were left empty, and the elements were getting kind of consecutively inserted. That is precisely what happens, which I am trying to show pictorially here, where the elements are getting inserted in a kind of linear chunk here and then here. So these are kind of linear chunks which are going to be making your elements getting clustered together, getting grouped together, right? It's possible that some element got inserted here and some other element got inserted, maybe I'll say here. But because of the conflict, you had to add another element here and some other element here, right? Because of linear probing. And similar things can happen here depending upon the insertion order. So if you look at the hash table, which is using linear probing after certain elements have been inserted, you will see that there are clusters of elements which are getting inserted. That is essentially called as a primary clustering. Why primary clustering could be a problem? Any suggestions? Aniruddha says wastage of space. Well, we have the array and that array size is not going to change. So we won't be able to waste more space. Ashwin says the bigger the cluster, the longer it takes to write or find, right? So the cluster size is going to grow. And yeah, Abhishek says in extreme case, it might be simple filling an array. That's right. Yeah, so let's look at it this way, that as soon as you have to look for a particular element, you might have to go through this linear cluster of elements, and that is going to add a sequentiality to your search. Sequentiality meaning you have to, that is going to increase the number of elements that you need to look for, although those might not be conflicting. Right? So if you have to look for elements which are conflicting, that is understandable because they are hashing to the same index. But in case of linear probing, elements which are not conflicting can also play a role in increasing the number of elements that you need to see before you find one. So that adds the linearity, or that adds to the number of iterations of find, insert, as well as remove. And therefore primary clustering, so assume that these primary clusters don't exist, which means that the elements are actually getting interspersed across the array. That means there are holes in between the elements, right? Not all the elements, but I mean some chunks might, smaller chunks, maybe 2-3 elements might be appearing together. That is okay. But so in that case, you are going to, as soon as there are holes, then you are going to do a very quick search for a particular element. The whole idea of hash table is that you should be able to randomly go to a particular location based on the key and probe the value there. But that is not going to happen now, because not only the conflicting elements, but the non-conflicting elements are also going to increase the number of iterations, number of indices that you are going to check for finding an element, right? So let's summarize that. So linear probing, groups of elements get formed. This is called clustering, and it increases not only the number of collisions, but also the searching time. So this is in some sense against our uniform distribution policy that we were thinking about, that the elements should get distributed, there should be holes and so on. But the elements are actually going to get clustered, right? So that creates a problem. Yeah, so one advantage of deletion is that it will create some holes, and that is essentially going to be advantageous. But deletions are usually rare, and therefore we would like to kind of solve this in a different way. Right? One of the ways in which it can be made to work is that if probing can leave some holes, right? So if I'm searching for an element or inserting an element, and instead of looking for consecutive entries, what I could do is I can leave some holes and look for non-consecutive entries. And if I do that, then I am going to leave some holes, and that might give you a better efficiency while inserting, searching, as well as removing of elements in the hash table. Okay. Any questions on this problem? Anybody who has not understood this? Right. So So we would like to leave some holes while probing for the next index. And that essentially is going to lead to some other type of probing, which in our case, we are going to look at quadratic probing. What does that mean? So our hash function was the same. And then there was a conflict function which was going to give us some index based on the number of conflicts I, which was getting added to hash of x. This function was earlier identity function or a linear function. Now I am going to say that it is going to be a quadratic function. So f of 1 is 1, f of 2 is 4, f of 3 is 9, and so on. If I do that, then I'm going to leave some holes. After 1, I'm going to look for, so hash of x plus 1. Then I'm going to look for hash of x plus 4, and then hash of x plus 9, and so on. That is going to leave some holes, and that might turn out to be better with respect to the distribution of indices. In general, if h is prime, then it's going to help us much better. So typical load factor is the average. Like in case of chaining, we said that this is going to be number of elements inserted divided by the size of the hash table. Now the number of elements inserted could be much larger than the size of the hash table because we said that we were using chaining. But in case of open addressing, like linear probing, quadratic probing, double hashing, we are using a single array, and therefore we would like to reduce the number of elements that we are inserting, or we can say that we are going to increase the h value to a sufficiently large value, and a heuristic value there is 0.5, which means that the hash table should be half full when you are inserting in the open addressing scheme, right? In case of chaining, we said that it should be less than 1. That's what we said. Good value there is 0.7 or so. Okay. So this avoids the primary clustering issue, and because it leaves holes. However, it doesn't guarantee that it is going to cover all the indices. That is one small disadvantage of quadratic probing. So when I am accessing hash of x, that is going to give some value. Now, after that, I am going to look for hash of x plus 1, which is the next value, then hash of x plus 4, then plus 9, plus 16, plus 25, and so on. And then it is going to wrap around and come back to, let's say, that index equal to 5 or something like that, and then index equal to maybe whatever, 41, something like that. So if you go around like this, it's not always guaranteed that it will cover all the indices. So some indices will never be reached. That is possible with respect to f we are talking about. But the same problem can occur with hash also. I mean, the hash function that you might have designed might not cover all the indices that are possible from 0 to h minus 1. Right? So this is a little smaller issue, but it might cause some other problems, right, as we'll see. Aniruddha says, will f of I equal to I plus 3 solve the issue? That it will cover all the elements? Yes, I think it will cover all the elements. So that is correct. But at the same time, 3 is relatively a smaller number. Issue of primary clustering? Yeah, so 3 is that way a little smaller number. We might have to increase it to a larger value k. The reason being that there might be large number of elements that might get hashed to nearby buckets, in which case I plus k might solve the issue. However, I'll also mention another thing, that so if I use I plus k, that is no longer a quadratic probing, right? So that becomes actually a linear probing itself. We said that identity function is just one way of implementing. So can we have I plus k, where k is some relatively larger constant depending upon how your data, how many elements you are inserting and so on. So will that solve the primary clustering problem? Because that is also going to leave holes. So if it turns out that if you are the primary clustering, if so up to I mean, if the plus k exists, then up to k minus 1 insertions, you are good. You are not going to cause this primary clustering problem. But as soon as it goes to K, suddenly the clusters will get formed. So it's going to be, in some sense, a sudden shift from an efficient mechanism to a non-efficient one as soon as K conflicts occur. Those conflicts need not be that they are getting hashed to the same value. The conflicts essentially means that all the blocks are getting filled. And therefore, this issue of one conflict, right, which was there in case of identity function, is now going to get delayed to K inserts, I mean K conflicts. So it's in some sense, by increasing it by K, we are delaying the primary clustering by a factor of K. If that suffices for your distribution, well and good. But that need not, I mean, if it doesn't, then it is going to come back to you. In case of quadratic probing, on the other hand, since you are increasing the gaps, yes, you might form a primary cluster at one place, but you are going to take more time to form primary cluster at the other place. Right? So, I mean, for the smaller values of I square, we are going to form the clusters. That is okay. I mean, you can always make I f of I equal to, let's say, I plus 5 square, right? So that will probably solve the issue. But what I'm trying to say is that 1, 4 are going to probably come together and form the cluster. But as soon as that happens, after that, it's going to be a larger gap with 9 and then 16, much larger gap. So even if primary clustering is going to create a problem at one place, it is not going to repeat the problem at other places. So that is an issue with the linear clustering, which can be addressed in a better way with a quadratic problem. So yes, to summarize, with I plus K or I plus 3, you are going to delay it by that factor. But once it happens, it is going to happen across all inserts. I mean, almost throughout the hash table, whereas typically that gets avoided with a quadratic probing. Yeah, Saicharan says I plus 3 will, yeah, so it will also form the clusters, just that it is going to get delayed. That's what. So in some sense, this is going to be dependent on your data distribution. If you think that I plus some K is going to be useful and you don't need to really go for quadratic probing, well and good. These days, I mean, multiplication is not going to be very different from addition with respect to the time taken. And therefore, even if you go for quadratic probing, it is going to be helpful. Any other concerns, questions here? Okay. So, yeah, there are some guarantees which will probably, theoretical guarantees, by the way, which can be given. So, in case of quadratic probing, which cannot be given in case of linear probing. So, if the table size is prime, right, and we are using quadratic probing, a new element can always be inserted if the table is half full, at max half full, right? So if there is space for, I mean, if there are 50% holes in the table and you are using a table size as prime number, some prime number, typically it is going to be a large number, but this theorem is going to apply even if the prime number is small, then you will always find a place for it. Where is this theorem coming from? So the one specific issue that we mentioned here is that it is not guaranteed to cover all the indices, right? Because you are looking at hash of x, then hash of x plus 1, hash of x plus 4, hash of x plus 9, and so on. And then it is going to wrap around and come back and so on. So it might not cover all the indices. But if it is a prime number, then using some numerical algebra, we'll be able to figure out, we'll be able to prove that certain, if there are 50% of the holes, then it is guaranteed that one of those holes will be picked for insertion. Right? It cannot be guaranteed if the hash table is more than half full. Right? But if it is less than that, then this guarantee can be provided. There is a proof also which I am going to skip, which is there on the slides, but You don't need to really worry about that. So that becomes a big advantage with respect to quadratic probing. You just set H to a prime number and make sure that the hash table is large enough such that the number of elements that are going to get inserted is less than 50%, which also means that you are going to waste 50% of space in that way. But yeah, if you can afford that, then there is really no problem. Right? So what can happen, by the way, because of quadratic probeams, it cannot cover all the indices, is that, so assume that H is not prime. Let's say you set it to some value, let's say 1000. You might insert, let's say 100 elements out of these 1000 elements, and then 101st element itself is saying that the hash table is full. I'm not able to find any empty entry. Right? So you have 1000 elements, 1000 element array, 1000 sized array. You have inserted only 100 elements, and because 101st element itself is saying that I am not able to find any empty entry. Why? Because the way that I square is going, it is covering all the indices and coming back to the same index. And then repeatedly it is finding a conflicting index where you have already inserted the elements. This is possible with a non-prime number, composite number. So that is not very useful. We definitely don't want 1000 element array and 900 entries to be wasted. So therefore we need to see if we can find some way in which H can be designed or H can be specified such that there are guarantees on finding a particular index that is covering certain number of elements. That happens when we have H as a prime number, which has been proven. Sai Charan says k-1 holds between first and second collision. After that, insertions will be consecutive. K-1 holds. No. So, oh, I see. So, okay, I think what Aniruddha was probably mentioning, and yeah, you're right, Sai Charan, with I plus 3, it is going, I plus k, it is going to be the same. I think I should have mentioned k into I rather than I plus k. Right? You are right that otherwise it will just move from I plus 1 to I plus k, and then I plus k plus 1, I plus k plus 2, and so on. So that is correct. So that is not something which we want. It should have been k into I. That's what I was actually referring to. That's right. Okay, any questions so far? So this is one place where theory and practice can actually go hand in hand, where you are giving this guarantee theoretically, which is going to be a good heuristic to be used. Not heuristic, but that is going to be useful actually in practice. In some other cases, it so happens that theoretically you provide a certain guarantee, but that guarantee is too loose to be useful in practice. And therefore, you might have to do something else in practice. For example, one example which we had discussed some time back is that we know that quicksort, for example, has a quadratic complexity, that is order of n square. But it actually gets, and merge sort is worst case n log n, right, which we have not looked at. But still, when it comes to library functions as well as what you implement for efficient execution, you implement quicksort rather than merge sort. That is because we typically talk about the worst case. The worst case is probably rare. And therefore, for an average case, quicksort also has the complexity of n log n. And efficiency wise, it turns out to be better than merge sort. So that is where there is sometimes a little gap with the worst case time complexities that we talk about. But such theorems can actually be very helpful to tie up the theory and practice. Okay, so I'll skip this particular proof. It's not difficult, it's just that we don't need to worry about this right now. Okay, so one question that we have is, does quadratic probing avoid primary clustering? The answer is yes, it does avoid primary clustering. You might see some small clustering at one place, but since the gaps kind of go on increasing, and therefore you will avoid it. Even if it occurs at one place, it's not going to occur at the other place, and therefore in some sense you can say that it avoids primary clustering. But does it lead to any other issue? Right? Any suggestions on that? Any thoughts on that? Mrityunjay is asking, how will the I value for collision be figured out while searching? See, the I value is the number of conflicts that have occurred. So first time I is 1, that is one conflict has occurred. So therefore, in case of linear probing, we'll look at whatever is the hash value plus 1. Let's say hashing is going to lead to the index number 51. Right? Hash of, let's say, Mrityunjay string is going to be 51. So you are going to look at 51 and insert it there. Now let's say that Sai Charan is also hashing to the same bucket 51. Since Mrityunjay has occupied that, Sai Charan needs to look for another index. The number of conflicts that have occurred is 1, and therefore I am going to look for whatever is the hash of Sai Charan, which is 51 plus 1, which is 52. So I'll look at the next value in linear probing. In case of, and then if that is also conflicted, then I'm going to look for 53 and 54 and so on. That is linear probing. In case of quadratic probing, I'm going to look at 51 plus 1, 51 plus 4, 51 plus 9 and so on. As the number of conflicts increase, that is the I value. Aniruddha says requirements of large H. Yes, that is definitely going to be one issue with respect to quadratic probing. However, I'll also mention that in any open addressing scheme, this H value needs to be large. Right? So, which is not there in case of chaining, but in case of open addressing, this issue is going to occur. Yes, but is there any specific issue because of quadratic probing? This requirement of large H is there for all the open addressing schemes. Is there something specific to quadratic probing? Okay, so it might not be very evident as such. Okay, Sai Charan says, why do we need holes in a hash table? To make sure that we find an empty spot early on, which improves the efficiency of the implementation. Time complexity will remain the same. Well, you might be able to do something with respect to the time complexity also based on the probability of hash tables, but that is going to be an average time complexity. But the worst case complexity will remain the same. But yeah, it will improve the average case complexity of the hash table. See, the holes are essentially going to be useful for linear probing as well as quadratic probing, because you are going to look at so if let's say that Aniruddha and Sai Charan map to nearby buckets, right? So Sai Charan maps to 51, Aniruddha maps to 52. And these are not conflicting. But then when I try to insert Mrityunjay, which is hashing to the same value as Sai Charan 51, that conflict is okay. But then it is going to look for the next entry, let's say 52, that is occupied by Aniruddha. Right? Mrityunjay and Aniruddha are not hashing to the same value, but still there is a conflict. And therefore, the requirement of holes comes into picture when keys are non-conflicting, but still because of the implementation, they have to look for different indices. So in some sense, there is a pseudo collision happen. That's why we need holes. Any other questions here? Okay. So it turns out that many times two elements which are mapping to the same initial index, right? So like we said, Mrityunjay and Sai Charan, if they are mapping to 51 initially, they will continue to get mapped to the same initial index, the same indices going forward, right? If they map to 51, yes, there is a conflict. Then 51 plus 1. 51 plus 4, 51 plus 9, 51 plus 16. They are going to try exactly the same spots. So whatever we were trying to avoid because of, collisions, those are actually getting collided further. And the number of collisions that are, so let's say that 5 entries, 5 strings are going to map to the same value, same index, the first time, that is hash of those 5 values is turning out to be the same. Then you are going to, the 5th entry that you insert will require 4 probes, right? So essentially you are going to get into this sort of chaining in the hash table itself, right? So the first entry gets inserted, the second entry hashes to the same value, and therefore there is one conflict. It is going to get inserted to the next whatever possible empty slot. Then the third element comes, that is going to incur 2 conflicts. Fourth element comes, it is going to incur 3 conflicts. So this is where the conflicts are going to, in some sense, create problem, and they are going to get linked in some way or chained in some way based on the indices provided by the quadratic probing. This, in some sense, is this chaining of elements within the hash table, but because of the quadratic probing function f, we can say that they are actually getting clustered in some way, right? This sort of clustering is called as, so this is what happens, right, pictorially. This is E1. Sorry, this is E1. Then when E2 got inserted, it got inserted at E1 plus 1. Then E1 plus 4, this is E3, right? And from there E1 plus 9 maybe, that is E4. So these conflicts are going to recur, and therefore there is a chaining between them, there is a clustering between them, just that these are looking wise separate. So this kind of clustering is called as secondary clustering, where because of the conflicts, these are still going to appear, these are still going to continue to conflict. This is called as a secondary clustering, although visually these are far apart, but these are still going to be causing issues because you are using that particular hash function of quadratic probing. Does that seem reasonable? Any questions on what is meant by secondary clustering? Sai Charan says, I'm still not very sure what quadratic probing is solving. Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, let's okay, let's take this particular example. I think we'll try to do it here. Let's say that Sai Charan got inserted here, right? And let me make use of that horizontal line, and let's say Aniruddha got inserted here. They are 2 different strings, and interestingly they are mapping to the different buckets, right? So I'm happy with that. Now Mrityunjay is getting hashed, and it gets hashed to the same bucket as Sai Charan. If this, since there is a conflict, there is no other way than, since we are not using chaining, it has to find an empty slot. Therefore, it is going to look for, let's say, some entry afterwards. Now, this entry A for Anirudh is going to be not conflicting with Mrityunjay in general, right? So, in absence of Sai Charan, Mrityunjay and Anirudh could coexist at different indices without any conflict. But because of the probing, we get into a conflict with Anirudh. Mrityunjay and Anirudh get into a conflict. Therefore, we need to look for, let's say, next entry. I'm just taking the example of linear probing here. And this is where maybe Mrityunjay gets inserted. I'll reuse that horizontal line. Suppose now that some other student needs to get inserted, right? So I'm going to make use of, let's say, not Abhishek, I'll probably use a different name. Let's say Rupesh is getting inserted here, right? So let's say Rupesh and Anirudh conflict. At this stage, this particular conflict is okay, but Rupesh doesn't conflict with Mrityunjay. However, I'll still incur in conflict, and therefore I'm going to insert R here. Now, this is how the conflicts are going to occur, even if the elements are actually not conflicting in linear probing. Now, imagine that there are actually holes. So ignore these colors, but maybe I'll say that S is inserted here and A is inserted here. So Sai Charan and Anirudh were not conflicting and they got inserted. That part is okay. Now when Mrityunjay is getting inserted, it will conflict with Sai Charan and it will get inserted here. Because there were two holes between these two entries, therefore Mrityunjay could find that entry easily. Similarly, Rupesh can be inserted here. Right? So ignore those colors. I'm just using the gap. So because of this, when I'm searching for elements, my efficiency is going to be increasing if I leave these gaps, which was not possible in linear probing. And that is where you get an advantage because you are leaving those holes in case of quadratic probing. Does that seem reasonable, Sai Charan?
Yes, sir. I was just wondering, like, even in secondary probing, like, quadratic probing, the same thing will happen, right?
It will occur for the entries which are conflicting.
Say, like, after performing quadratic probing for the first collision of S, say if it is redirected to the index A, that is similar to having S and A one after the other in the case of linear probing, right?
That is...
So now when Mrityunjay comes to the cell Sai Charan, he's again redirected to Aniruddha's cell, and now he again faces a collision and he is further redirected to another cell. So they seem almost identical. Like only that in the general sense they seem far apart, but
I understand what you are saying, but there is a difference. In case of linear probing, it was guaranteed. So as Mrityunjay says that the chances of this happening is going to be very small. The reason being that the indices are different. In case of linear probing, it was all consecutive. But in case of, let's say that S actually the next index is A after S, M might get hashed there, index there. But after that, it will go to some other index, which is also possible to be occupied. That is okay. But if there is some other, let's say R is getting indexed at A, the next entry that will be looked for R is not going to be the same entry which we had looked for M, because the index is going to be different. Right? The number of conflicts that had occurred for M was 2, whereas the one for R is going to be 1, and therefore I'm going to look for whatever is the index of A plus, let's say in this case 1 square, whereas for M it is going to be 2 square, and therefore the probability of these conflicts is going to reduce considerably. It's not exactly the same index.
Got it, sir. Got it.
Any other concerns? Feel free to ask these questions, no problem.
Sir, just one more thing. Is there a particular reason why we use quadratic? Like it can be cubic or anything arbitrary?
Yes, that is correct. So it can be actually cubic also. It's just that I think from there are some theoretical ways in which you can prove that if you use certain numbers as the in the hash function for I, then you will be able to actually cover all the elements, or you will be able to cover certain fraction of the elements, right? So those proofs become easier if you are using a particular function of I. So in case of I square, it becomes easier to use. Whereas, but you can use iCube. I don't know if there are guarantees. It should be there, possible. But if you are able to prove these guarantees for iCube, there is no harm in using larger holes there. Okay, so this particular secondary index problem can be solved by making sure that, so now let's come back to this diagram where there are colors and arrows, where if there is some element E1 here, sorry, it starts from here. If there is element E1 here and then E2 here and E3 here, so E2, E3, etc. should get hashed to a different value when there are conflicts. Then only there is a possibility that you will avoid the secondary clustering problem, right? So that is essentially is a double hashing. So that way it is relatively simple, but the motivation should become clear, that secondary indexing motivation, secondary clustering motivation should be clear. So what you are going to do is to again have the same hash function here, and then there is a conflict function f. In this case, the conflict function is going to be not only a different hash function, but it needs to be dependent on how many times the conflict has occurred, so that the distribution becomes much, much better. So yeah, so the distribution improves and avoids both primary as well as the secondary clustering. We have to make sure that it doesn't evaluate to 0, because otherwise this f of I becomes 0 and it hashes to the same value, and that is not going to help you in any further, right? So h being prime becomes more and more important from linear to quadratic, right, as we have seen. And it also becomes important that it is a prime number from quadratic to double. And not only that, there are different kinds of primes also. So there is a whole branch of mathematics which looks at prime numbers, and it turns out that different prime numbers have different properties. So I think some of you who are interested might look up that literature, where different prime numbers can give you different distributions. For us, for now, it suffices that we just use a prime number. Yeah, it also needs another hash function, like we were talking about chaining, which required a different data structure itself. In case of open addressing, we require a single data structure, but with double hashing, we need two hash functions. Right? So I'll leave this hashopen.h and hashopen.cpp for you to look up. So that completes kind of our discussion on dictionaries for both the hash tables as well as the AVL trees. And we looked at initially binary search trees. Then we looked at the AVL. We also looked at the splaying part. And then we looked at the hash tables. Within that, we looked at 4 different kinds of ways in which hash tables could be inserted. So that completes our discussion on dictionaries. And next time, we'll look at something related to priority queues, right? That means heaps, and then we'll come back to Huffman coding, etc. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. Yeah, by the way, about your quiz too, some of you have mailed me after I have posted the marks yesterday. I'll look at your emails and reply to that. If you find any discrepancy in any of the answers, just mail me, no problem. I'll take a look at that. I might have missed something, so feel free to mail me. I'll take a look. All right, if there are no questions, we'll stop here. See you in the next class.